A massive online role-playing game is a game where you can immerse yourself in an imaginary world. One of such games is called Yggdrasil. It had a great map, and it stood out from among many games of its time in Japan. After 12 years of operation, the world of Yggdrasil is about to come to an end. Inside the game, some heroes fight with soldiers of the undead and totally annihilate them. They reach the entrance of the place where they're headed, and they see a strange being named Momonga who's standing there with his subjects. Not long after, Momonga wipes the floor with their faces and shows them who's boss. After that, he does the classic supervillain laugh, because this would be incomplete without that. Sometime later, Momonga sits in a round table with his other friend, Hiro, who's been gone for a couple of years. Hiro laments that he's not been able to come play because he's been working for so long. They're currently in a place called the Great Tomb of Nazarick, which they created together back in the days. Hiro thinks Momonga being guild leader was good because he kept the place. As he leaves, he hopes to meet Momonga in real life. After Hiro leaves, Momonga wonders why he didn't stay, since today is the last day Yggdrasil's server will be up. He knows Hiro's offer to meet again will never happen since there's no place or time attached to that. Our guy angrily hits the table because the server is being taken down and the home they've built is going to be taken away from them. He even laments that they built this home together with virtual blood and sweat. Suddenly, he picks himself up and goes to check the guild's weapon, the staff of Iron's wool gown. They had given their all to make this, and some of them spent their paid time off to get the materials for the staff. These guys definitely don't have a social life outside of this game. Momonga grabs the staff and he recalls there were two requirements for joining their guild. Iron's wool gown. The first is that the player's avatar has to be human and the player has to be a functioning member of society. Can't say how much they're functioning if they spend all their time off work creating one staff. When Momonga steps out, he finds some of the NPCs bowing to him in the hall, which includes the combat maids of the Pleiades. Apparently, the maids were supposed to be the last line of the defense of the throne, but their guild was so strong that no player made it that far in. Momonga leads the NPCs through the halls one last time, and they walk towards another hot NPC named Albedo. After taking a seat on the throne, Momonga notices that Albedo, the ranking NPC in their Tomb of Nazarick, is mighty fine. She supervises all the guardians of the tomb, so he decides to check out her settings. While he goes through, he finds out that his guild member who created her setting had added a loop in her settings to make her a thirsty girl. For the fun of it, Momonga adds a setting that Albedo is deeply in love with him, which makes him laugh. Moments later, Momonga realizes he has to wake up by 4 a.m. for work, but he decides to wait till the server shuts down. When the server timer runs out, Momonga notices he's still in the Tomb of Nazarick. He wonders if they push back the shutdown time and suddenly begins to freak out when he notices he can't access his console. Suddenly, Albedo asks Momonga if something is wrong, and she begins to panic because he seems distressed. It seems the setting is kicking in, and when Albedo pushes up her jugs in his sight, our boy almost has a brain aneurysm. He realizes the function to leave the game isn't working, and Albedo continues to panic because she can't help him. As if that was not enough, Momonga realizes that Albedo's mouth is moving, and he can't believe his eyes that he's actually talking with an NPC. He wonders if this is a bug and doesn't know what to do, since he can't use his console or contact the administrators. Unsure of what to do, Momonga orders the NPC, Savas, to step out and inspect the surroundings of Nazarick. He also orders Pleiades to guard the 9th floor. They obey his commands even though they're not related to the game, so he wonders what the heck is going on. And Amli Adbatid so liver the fighting chapter 7 is lecturing his Kate. The worst part is that Albedo keeps eyeing him like he's a snack. Momonga wonders how to contact the administrators and considers his message bell, which players use to contact each other. However, he's not sure if he can even use magic. Suddenly, Albedo asks the Lord if he has any orders for her to obey. She says it in such a tone like she's expecting him to tell her to get on all fours and call him daddy. When he tells her to approach him, she happily jumps towards him. Our guy is surprised that she smells so great, but he soon begins to worry because there is no feature to smell in the game. He asks for her permission to touch her, and when he touches her, he realizes she has a pulse, which makes no sense. The look on Albedo's face is as if she's about to climax. Even though it's extremely weird, Momonga musters the courage to ask if he can touch his chest, and Albedo gladly asks him to touch her as if he offered her $1,000,000. When Momonga touches, Albedo starts moaning. Momonga wonders how he's even able to do things that were not allowed in the game. He realizes this can't be a new game and wonders if this virtual world suddenly became real. That sounds nuts to him, but he also notices it's impossible to program these kinds of things into a game. The weird part is that our guy keeps feeling her jugs while thinking about all this. He soon realizes what he's doing and takes his hands off. With great pleasure in her face, Albedo guesses that her lord is about to take her right there. She asks him if she should remove her clothes or if he would like to do that himself, but Momonga tells her now is not the time to be doing such things. She panics, so he forgives her and tells her he wants her to get the other guards at the 6th floor fighting arena in 1 hour. Our guy is a pretty decent guy, and he worries that he's messed up the NPC his friend made by adding the loop for her to be madly in love with him. This guy's decent, but we both know you wouldn't have taken the high road if you were in this situation. We both know what you do on the incognito tab. Eventually, Momonga teleports to the 6th floor arena, and he's surprised that his teleportation ring still works. He's glad that Albedo and the others are loyal, as they were programmed to be, but he doesn't know if it's the same for the other characters in the game. When he reaches there, he looks for the twin dark elves that another of his guild members created to guard the floor. Soon after, one of them named Aura jumps down, excited to have crushed her jump. She She soon expresses her excitement to see him, and Momonga asks about her brother, Mare. It turns out that Mare is scared to see Momonga, but Aura bullies him to come forward. Mare pulls down his skirt, and he seems to be dressed as a girl, while his sister is dressed as a guy. How confusing. Soon after, Momonga asks the elves to help him with something regarding the staff of Ain's wall gown. The elves are in awe, so Momonga takes the opportunity to geek out about how the stones on the staff are a god-level artifact, and how the power of the staff itself transcends god level. When he realizes he's geeking out, he stops talking and asks them to help him run some tests with the staff. Soon after, two monsters on the floor set up a target for Lord Momonga. Normally, he'd click icons to conjure magic, but now that he doesn't have his console, he hopes he can conjure magic by concentrating hard enough. He soon takes the spear and uses it to summon something called the Primal Fire Elemental, which burns up the targets easily. Aura is excited, so Momonga asks them if they'd like to fight the being. Aura is excited to fight, but Mare tries to give an excuse of errands, but his sister drags him in. Moments later, Momonga sets them against the monster. The monster shoots fire at them, but Aura jumps out of the way and slices up the monster. Regardless, the monster joins back up, but Mare provides support for her with a shield. While they're fighting, Momonga confirms his magic skill works. He tries to connect to the outside world again, but it doesn't work. He soon contacts Sebas with the message function, and Sebas tells him there's a slight problem. Momonga immediately tells Sebas to report to the 6th floor with the others and report what he saw. When the kids finish fighting, Momonga gives them some water from his portal. Aura confesses that she'd expected him to be scarier and adds that she likes the way he is. Momonga doesn't know what's going on, but he realizes that the NPCs are loyal to him. He decides to act as a proper superior in front of them and learn all he can about this world too. He was max level when the game was up and wonders if his strength is still the same. He also wonders if he should return to another world, since he didn't have any friends or family in the real world. Soon after, Albedo and the Guardians of the Floor show up. They soon begin to pledge their allegiance to Lord Momonga, and Momonga learns that two other Guardians aren't present. In a flashback to when the first vampire guardian Shalter appeared, Momonga recognizes that Shalter guards the first 3 floors of the Great Tomb. Surprised to see Momonga, Shalter rushes towards him and hugs him in excitement. Aura tells Shalter to stop slobbering on Lord Momonga, so Shalter calls Aura a half-pint because of her height. Annoyed, Aura accuses Shalter of having put in implants in her chest and claims she uses a portal to get there instead of running because she was afraid her implants would shift. Shalter retorts that Aura has a flat chest, but Aura claims she's only 76 years old and they'll develop, but Shalter is in an undead body. As the ladies argue, Mare looks at them in confusion. Soon after, a warrior guardian of the 5th floor, Cositus, shows up and tells the lady to stop acting like children in front of the master. When Shalter summons fire to burn Aura up, Cositus readies his weapon, but Momonga tells them all to stop playing around. Moments later, Demiurge, the guardian of the 7th floor and an insanely powerful demon, shows up with Albedo. The guardians soon pledge their fidelity to their lord. Momonga tells them he's pleased that they've all come, which surprises them. However, Albedo tells him that his thanks are wasted on them because they've pledged themselves to him. Albedo confesses that their abilities may not meet his expectations, but they will strive to meet them in honor of their blessed creators. By blessed creators, she's referring to other low-life bums in the guild who had created them. Pleased, Momonga tells them he trusts that they will all fulfill their duties, which excites them. He soon informs them about the errand he sent Sebas on. As if on cue, Sebas shows up and informs them that the Great Tomb of Nazareth is not longer surrounded by a swamp, but by grasslands. More so, he couldn't find a single building, human or monster, a kilometer from them, which means they're isolated. Momonga confirms his suspicions that Nazareth has been transported to an unknown land. He immediately asks Albedo and Demiurge to fortify their defenses and work on a way to strengthen their information gathering. He also asks Mare to conceal the walls of the Great Tomb of Nazareth, so Mare suggests that they can use magic and smear some part with dirt and vegetation. To create more cover, Momonga suggests that they blend in with a hill, but Sebas points out that there is no hill but flat ground. To solve that, Momonga tells them to create dummy hills to blend in. Also, he asks them to conceal the other parts of the wall with illusion magic. Finally, he tells them he wants them all to tell him in their own words what kind of person he is to them. When he asks Shalter, she fawns over his beauty and how nothing in creation can compare with him. Demiurge says he's a man who makes wise decisions and acts upon them efficiently. Cositus says his strength is unrivaled by any guardians. Sebas points out that he's the head of all the supreme beings. Aura says he's compassionate and always 3 steps ahead. Finally, Albedo mentions that he's their ultimate master and the man to whom her heart belongs, but that statement makes Momonga uncomfortable. After dismissing them, our guy soon teleports back into his hall and he wonders why the guardians esteem him so highly and why they're so serious. Meanwhile, Aura and Mare talk about how they were initially worried that the pressure coming from Master Momonga's body was going to crush them. They all fawn over his strength and talk about how benevolent he is. As they praise him, Albedo looks like she's about to burst with joy. She talks about how he stands at the top of the 41 supreme beings and how he mercifully stayed with them even after the others left them behind. Sebas, on the other hand, simply tells them he has to go stay by Momonga's side. Albedo tells him to signal her if there's any trouble or if Lord Momonga requests for her personally. Like a schoolgirl, she begins to tell them all she'd leave anything behind if he summoned her, especially into his bedroom. When she continues rambling about how she'd need to bathe first, Sebas tells her she's made her point clear and leaves. For some reason, reason, Shaltir seems like she's crying. The others ask her if she's fine, so she tells them that the Lord's power was so intense that her underwear went through a small crisis. Annoyed, Albedo calls her a disgusting dog and a parasite, and Aura calls her a big-mouthed gorilla. These two thirsty ladies start to lock horns, so Cocytus and Demiurge leave Aura to handle the ladies. However, Demiurge promises to intervene if it gets bloody. While they're away, Demiurge tells Mare that he'd like to see the union that could be formed between Lord Momonga and any of the ladies. Mare asks him what he means, so Demiurge explains that every great leader needs an heir. Just in case Lord Momonga joins the others who have left, Demiurge believes it would be wise for him to have an heir, but Cocytus disagrees that the ladies won't be needed if they do their job. Regardless, Demiurge points out that it'd be cool to pledge their allegiance to the Lord's lineage instead of only having one Lord. When Demiurge says that, Cocytus almost gets a hard-on because of how awesome that would be. It would seem these guardians have nothing else to do but fawn over their lord and the prospect of being able to do that to more lords. Eventually, Demiurge asks Mare if there's a reason he's wearing female clothing. To clarify, Mare explains that his creator, Buku Buku Chagama, chose this dressing for him, and she had told him he was a crossdresser even though he doesn't know what that means. This creator is obviously as twisted as her name. Mare supposes that the female dressing might help him cast magic better, and Demiurge finds it interesting. He even wonders if getting other males stationed under them to wear female dressing would help them too. However, Demiurge soon pulls Cocytus out of his fantasies and goes to check on the ladies. He soon learns from Aura that they've stopped fighting and are now arguing about who's going to be the head wife and favorite in Master Momonga's future harem. For most of you pervs watching this, getting stuck in a video game is about the best chance you have of actually getting a harem. Confused, Demiurge commends their discussion but points out that they all need to get back to the tasks they were given. Eventually, Albedo decides to go back to work but promises Shaltir that they'll return to this later. Meanwhile, Lord Momonga picks up a sword. Although he's of a magician class, he believes he should be able to swing a sword since he's level 100. He tries, but the sword falls down, and he soon realizes he can't wield items specific to his in-game class. He's been in this world for 3 days, and he hasn't felt odd about his undead form ever since. Also, when he gets emotionally unstable, some outside force makes him calm down, and he doesn't know how. He also hasn't felt the need to eat or sleep. Finally, he realizes he didn't act on his libido and realizes that's one more sword he won't be wielding. A nearby maid soon picks up the sword for him, so he uses his magic to create a night item around himself. This time, he can swing the sword powerfully. He realizes that, just like in the game, he can bypass his class restrictions by using the power of a magic item. Soon, Momonga tells the head maid that he's stepping out. She suggests that the guard follow him, but he tells her he wants to go out discreetly despite her protest. Momonga teleports to the first floor of the Great Tomb. It's tiring that he can't use magic in this armor, but he knows he can use magic items. He soon runs into 3 demon generals named Jealousy, Hubris, and Wrath, who are under Demiurge. Soon after, Demiurge shows up and immediately bows to Lord Momonga. Confused, Demiurge asks why he's traveling without an armed escort, but Momonga panics that his cover has been blown. However, he realizes Demiurge must have known because only someone wearing a guild ring can freely teleport around Nazarick. Eventually, Momonga tells Demiurge there's a reason for this. Immediately, Demiurge starts to ramble about how impeccable the Lord's attention to detail is when Momonga only wanted to step out for some fresh air. However, Demiurge explains that he can't let Lord Momonga leave without an escort because he'll blame himself if something happens, so Momonga permits him to escort him. They soon step out, and Momonga is amazed by the view of the night sky. Momonga soon brings out an item that allows him to fly, and Demiurge is forced to transform into a being with wings so he can keep up. Lord Momonga flies into space and towards the moon and considers how beautiful the sky is. Meanwhile, Demiurge mentions that he believes this world exists so Lord Momonga can adorn himself with its infinite riches, and the guardians exist to help him achieve it. Momonga agrees but points out that it would be selfish to hoard everything for himself when he can share it with those in Nazarick. Demiurge promises to use all their power to help him obtain what he wants, but Momonga laughs that it's too early for a quest. However, when he says it would be exciting to take over the world, Demiurge is shocked, but Momonga thinks to himself that he can't really pull that off. He wonders also if he's the only player who came to this world from Yggdrasil, but also wonders if there are other players, but he couldn't reach them with his message because they're too far away. Soon after, Momonga sees Mare using his magic to create an earthen wall around Nazarick. He tells Demiurge that he wants to thank Mare for his hard work, so he asks him what he can give to him. Demiurge points out that Mare would be happy just to have the Lord speak to him, so Momonga approaches him. Momonga praises Mare's work of protecting Nazarick from intruders, and he gives him a ring of Ain's Wallgown as a reward. Confused, Mare explains that he can't accept this because only supreme beings can wear it. However, Momonga tells him the ring can help him teleport between the floors unimpeded, so he gives him the ring to help his work. Excited, Mare thanks him and promises to work extra hard to be worthy of this gift. When Mare asks the Lord why he's dressed like that, Momonga stutters, but Albedo comes to answer. She explains that Lord Momonga dressed this way so as not to distract them from their work, so Momonga agrees with her. Suddenly, Albedo sees the ring on Mare's finger and almost loses her mind for a second. However, she immediately controls herself and pretends not to see it. Lord Momonga soon dismisses Mare and gives Albedo a guild ring as well, but she pretends not to know what he's talking about. Albedo receives the ring, but she suddenly begins to shiver. river, and it seems like she soiled her underwear. Immediately, Lord Momonga promises Demiurge to prepare one for him another time and teleports away. Immediately, Momonga disappears. Albedo screams out, "Oh yes," in excitement. Meanwhile, a group of warriors move around and their leader points out that they'll attack the next village the next morning, so he tells his men to guide the beasts to their cages. The next morning, a group of soldiers notices a nearby village is burning. When they reach there, they find the village destroyed and try to help the injured. The general, Gazef, tells his vice chief to move the injured people to their kingdom, but the vice chief has some concerns. The vice chief tells his general that the king sent them out here to deal with bandits that have been attacking villages, but they were only sent out with 50 soldiers. The vice chief believes the nobles did this intentionally to cause them to fail by setting a trap for them. He believes their plan is to remove the king's most trusted so they could have a way to attack the king. The vice chief suggests they head back, but Gazef refuses to head back. Because he was born in a village and always lived in fear of death, Gazef wishes to give these people the hope that he never had. Meanwhile, in Nazarick, Momonga uses a mirror of remote viewing to look around the areas of Nazarick. When he looks through the mirror, he sees a group of soldiers killing the people in a small village called Carnet. For some reason, Momonga notices the sight of all this blood doesn't affect him when he would have passed out in the real world. When Sebas asks what they should do, Momonga tells him to stand down because there's no reason to interfere in the people's affairs. However, Momonga remembers Touch Me, his friend who created Sebas. He recalls a long time ago when he wasn't so strong in the game, and Touch Me destroyed those who ambushed him. When Momonga asked Touch Me why he saved him, Touch Me excitedly stated that saving a person in trouble is always the right thing to do. For someone whose nickname sounds like a child abuser's, Touch Me seems pretty legit. Recalling Touch Me's kindness, Momonga decides to test his strength in his new world. He immediately tells Sebas to raise the security level of Nazarick to maximum and to tell Albedo to meet him there, prepared for battle. He also asks him to prepare soldiers who are skilled in stealth and who can use invisibility. Immediately, Momonga opens a portal that leads to the place where some soldiers are attacking a lady named Henri who's trying to protect her little sister, Nemu. The sight of Momonga scares both the soldiers and the girls, and Momonga immediately uses his magic to crush the heart of one of the soldiers. The next soldier retreats, but Momonga strikes him with lightning. Momonga is surprised that weak spells like this can eliminate these men, so he summons an undead knight. He immediately tells the Death Knight to eliminate anyone in the village who looks like this soldier, and the Death Knight runs away like an excited toddler who just got a few bucks to buy ice cream. Moments later, Albedo appears in sick armor. She apologizes for being late and attempts to deal with the girls, whom she refers to as pathetic lower life forms. However, Momonga clarifies that these girls are no threat and gives Henri a potion to heal her wound. Henri thinks it's blood and she decides to drink it out of fear, but her younger sister Nemu stops her. Annoyed, Abeldo almost cuts off their heads, but Momonga stops her. He explains to the girls that it's not blood, so Henri takes it and is healed immediately. When Momonga learns Henri knows about magic, he tells her he's a magic caster and casts 2 protection spells around them. He also gives them 2 horns that they can use to summon an army of goblins to help them. As he leaves, Henri and Nemu thank him for saving them. When Henri asks him his name, our guy proudly tells her he's Ainz Woolgown and tells her to tell everyone of his power. Meanwhile, in the village, the Death Knight kicks the soldiers around like footballs. When he starts to panic, one of them who thinks he's strong attacks the monster with his sword, but it shatters. The Death Knight knocks him away, and as it tears others in half, they realize they're doomed. Suddenly, one of their leaders called Bellius orders the others to come act as his shield to protect him from the monster. He offers the men gold coins, but they don't listen to him. Soon after, the monster stabs him in the chest like 17 times, so he dies properly. Some of the soldiers realize the government pay isn't enough to risk their lives, but as they're about to split, one of them that thinks he's a hotshot tells them they'll stand their ground and defend their brothers. In a few seconds, the Death Knight tears their flesh like paper. Eventually, the hotshot guy runs in when he should be running away, and the Death Knight cuts his head off so he stops having funny ideas. Immediately, Momonga appears and stops the Death Knight from killing more soldiers. He tells the remaining soldiers to tell their owners what they saw and tells them to tell everyone his name, Ainz Woolgown. When the villagers ask him what he came here for, he explains that he couldn't stand by and watch innocent people be eliminated. When they look at him with raised eyebrows, our guy eventually tells him he didn't do it for free, so the villagers calm down. Momonga realizes they'll trust his intentions if they feel he's doing this for financial gain. This time, Momonga conceals his face not to scare the villagers and plans to wipe the memory of the previous girls. Later, Momonga meets with the village chief to learn about the area because that's what he's really after. He told them he's a magic caster and he doesn't go out much, and they immediately trust him. Momonga wonders why they easily trust him just because he said he's a magic caster, and he wonders how strong the other magicians in this world are. From them, he learns that Nazarick and this village known as Carne are part of the RIZZ kingdom border. On the other side is a place called the Baharuth Empire. Both countries are on bad terms and usually battle close to the capital city named Rantel. There's also another country named Slain Theocracy. The village chief assumes that the Baharuth Empire was responsible for the attack based on the crest of the Knight's shield. However, Momonga suspects the Slain Theocracy might have staged this event to maintain hostility between the 2 countries. The village chief also tells him about Rantel, which has goblins, orcs, and ogres. However, there are adventurers there to keep the population of the monsters in check. After further questioning, Momonga realizes he'd have to make a home for himself himself an E-Rantle to find out more. Later, the villagers bury their dead. Momonga realizes he can wake them up with their wand of resurrection, but he refuses to so as not to get in more trouble. It may raise suspicion that there's a magic caster who is skilled with killing and raising the dead. Momonga is glad that his good deed will spread the name of Ainz Woolgown. As his reputation grows, he believes that other players that may also be stuck in this world may seek him out. Moreover, he plans to win the support of one of the countries by getting a cause for himself. As they're about to leave, one of the humans greets them. Momonga notices Albedo seems to dislike humans. When he asks her, she says there's nothing to like about them because they're weak and pathetic. Just tiny insects that exist to be crushed underfoot. To those of you who are clearly crushing on Albedo, you heard the lady. She's gonna crush you under her feet and not in the foot fetish way. Eventually, Momonga tells Albedo to treat the humans with kindness even if she has to act. Although, as an effect of being an undead, he also has no feelings for humans. Suddenly, Momonga notices there's a problem and learns from the village chief that more soldiers are rushing towards the village. Momonga tells the chief to gather the survivors around his house and asks him to come meet them in the town square. Moments later, General Gazef arrives with the soldiers and explains that the king of the RIZZ had sent him to fight against the knights attacking villages. The chief thanks the general, so Momonga introduces himself as Ainz Woolgown, a magic user that helped the villagers against the knights. Shocked, the general thanks Momonga for his help. Immediately, one of the soldiers tells the general that they've spotted a group of soldiers approaching the village. In a flashback, a man named Nigun, captain of a group called Sunlight Scripture, is given the responsibility of eliminating General Gazef in the RIZZ kingdom. The priest gives him a sealing crystal that contains the miracle of the gods, which he can only use when necessary. Nigun soon charges his soldiers to carry out the will of the gods. Meanwhile, in the Carne village, General Gazef and his men, along with Ainz, hide from the magic casters outside. Gazef points out that only the slain theocracy can send this many magic casters at once. He knows they're part of a special ops unit under the head priest, which must be one of the 6 scriptures. Upon questioning, Gazef agrees that the men who attacked the village must be men disguised from the slain theocracy. Ainz asks if this village has some significant value, and Gazef realizes the men must be after him since Ainz doesn't know why they're here. Ainz recognizes that the creatures with the magic casters look like archangel flames, and he wonders why the monster from Yggdrasil is here. Eventually, Gazef offers to hire Ainz to fight with him, but our guy declines his offer. Regardless, Gazef thanks him for saving this village but asks him to grant the villagers one more time. He admits that he knows it's a selfish request, and as he's about to kneel, Ainz stops him and assures him he'll protect the village. As Gazef steps out, Ainz gives him a small sculpture as a gift. As the soldiers move out, Momonga tells Albedo that he's growing fonder of the helpless humans, even though he also saw them as insects when he first came. Soon after, the village chief approaches Ainz to know what they'll do, so Ainz tells him that they'll escape when Gazef creates a path for them to escape. Meanwhile, Gazef leads his men to lead the invaders away from the village, then find a way to retreat. It appears his vice chief was right after all. As Gazef moves forward, he shoots an arrow, but it's blocked by a magic caster. Suddenly, the caster pushes his horse back and knocks him to the ground. Suddenly, one angel attacks him, and he attacks the angel with his sword, but it doesn't cut through. However, he manages to knock the angel away. When the angel returns, he strengthens his sword and manages to cut it down. Soon after, several more angels appear. Even though he's surrounded, Gazef feels everything is going as planned, so he leaves everyone else in Ainz's hands. Suddenly, his men run back to protect him, and he calls them fools for coming back when he told them to retreat. Regardless, he smiles because he believes they're fools he's proud to fight beside. The soldiers are soon attacked by the angels, and the angels prevail by their numbers. To equalize things, Gazef decides to attack Commander Nigun to weaken them. As he advances, several angels block him, but he cuts them down with a 6-fold slash of light. More angels come at him, but he cuts them in half. The sight of their commander's valor makes the men believe they can win, but Nigun makes fun of Gazef. He soon summons another set of angels and tells him to focus on Gazef, and it's at this point that Gazef realizes they're in trouble. Not long after, Gazef's men are taken down, and the general is attacked by magic casters from all sides till he starts coughing out blood. He's also attacked by a swarm of angels, and even though he fights them off, there are too many. One of the angels stabs him, and Nigun tells all his men to attack Gazef at once to seal his fate. Annoyed, Gazef gets up to make one last stand. He states that he's the chief warrior of RIZZ, and he'll die 1,000 times before he loses to the likes of them. However, Nigun tells him he'll certainly die, and they'll massacre the rest of the village after they're done with him. But Gazef laughs and tells Nigun that his men will certainly get massacred when the man in the village gets them. Nigun believes he's bluffing and tells his angels to take out Gazef, but Ainz suddenly transports Gazef to the village house where the other villagers are hiding behind Ainz's magical barrier. When Gazef learns that Ainz had vanished and he appeared in his place, he checks the sculpture in his pocket. The sculpture fades away, so Gazef smiles, realizing Ainz had saved him. Meanwhile, Momonga introduces himself to the men of the slain theocracy as Ainz. Nigun condescendingly asks if he's here to beg for his life or for the lives of the villagers, but Ainz tells him he has a lot of cojones to come here to destroy the villagers he saved. However, Nigun calls Ainz a meager magic caster, but Ainz tells him to offer his pitiful life without resistance so he doesn't experience pain. Regardless, Nigun tells his angels to attack this foolish person, so 2 of the angels stab Ainz. Amused, Negan is surprised Ainz was taken out so easily, but when the angels begin to shiver, Negan is surprised. Ainz tells Negan that he'll wish he had listened to him. The magic casters believe Ainz is using a trick against the attacks, but Ainz explains that he uses physical nullification, which completely nullifies physical attacks of low-level weapons and monsters. With one move, Ainz smashes the angels into pieces. Ainz confirms that these are the magical angels from Yggdrasil, and he wonders why these people can use magic from Yggdrasil. Annoyed, Negan tells all his angels to attack Ainz. Ainz asks Albedo to stand back and destroys all the angels with one move. Negan believes this is impossible, and his magic casters attack Ainz with more spells from Yggdrasil. Ainz asks them where they learned it, and Albedo crushes the head of one of the casters who came too close. However, Ainz reminds her she didn't need to interfere since these low-level spells would have done him no harm. Albedo insists the men should be able to go through her before fighting a supreme being like him, but Ainz laughs that these men can't beat her if they had 10 lifetimes to prepare. Under pressure, Negan summons a high-level angel called Principality of Observation. As the angel attacks Ainz, he stops the attack and destroys the angel with a single blast of flame. Negan can't believe his eyes, so he brings out his sealing crystal to summon the highest level angel. Ainz recognizes the crystal from Yggdrasil, so he tells Albedo to take care of this. Excited, Negan summons the highest form of angel, called Dominion Authority. When Ainz sees it, he's disappointed that this is their strongest card, but Negan thinks he's regretting his actions. However, Ainz tells him he didn't believe he put up his guard for such child's play, but Negan believes Ainz is lying because no man can survive the might of this angel. Riled up, Negan tells the angel to smite Ainz with its divine power of the gods, which is the only product of 7-tier magic. The Dominion Authority smites Ainz, and Negan seems pleased until Ainz starts to laugh because he finally knows how it feels to experience pain. At that point, Negan's eyes almost pop out of their sockets. Suddenly, Albedo screams that she would destroy these lower life forms that caused pain to the Lord of her heart, but Ainz calms her down. Eventually, Ainz creates a black hole to swallow the boss angel like it's vacuum trash. Shocked, Negan realizes even demons don't have this kind of power and asks who he is. When Ainz tells him it's time to end this, Negan calls him Lord and begs him. Frantically, Negan offers the lives of his men and everything else it would take to appease him, but Albedo tells him that humans like him should be grateful to him for ending their miserable lives. This woman has a mouth on her. Negan wonders what she means by humans like her, so Ainz takes off his mask before eliminating them all. When they head back, Momonga wonders if he lived up to Albedo's expectation as the Lord of Nazarick. Meanwhile, Albedo follows after, blushing because of how much of a badass Lord Ainz is. Later, she asks Ainz why he saved one of the human soldiers and why she didn't just send him to fight against these people. Ainz tells her he knows her strength and trusts her devotion, but they must proceed with caution until they know how strong their enemy is. When they get back home, Momonga apologizes to everyone for leaving on his own, but he announces to them that he has changed his name to Ainz Woolgown and they'll call him Lord Ainz from now on. But the subjects gladly submit and promise that everyone in this world will know of the greatness of their supreme ruler of death. Ainz tells him to spread the name through this world, but his real purpose is to ensure that any of his friends that may have come here will know that they're not alone and find him. Sometime later, Albedo reads a report from Aura that there's been no contact report from any Yggdrasil players in their vicinity, but she plans to increase her search. Albedo also mentions that she has information from the man they captured. Apparently, Negan is from the Slain Theocracy and commands their Special Ops unit. The Slain Theocracy is a nation that wishes to unite humans against all other races and would wipe out every other race if they had the chance. Ainz decides it's too dangerous to contact them now. After giving the report, Ainz praises Albedo for a good report. She becomes hysterical that he praises her so well and asks him to take her immediately. Regardless, Ainz tells her he won't take advantage of her because he programmed her to have these feelings towards him. However, Albedo says it doesn't matter and asks him if her feelings are a burden. When he can't answer, she concludes they're on the same page and proposes their relationship move to the next level. But Ainz is uncomfortable because he had messed with the settings his teammate designed for her, but Albedo believes it doesn't matter as long as she's found true love. Suddenly, Shaltir steps in and praises Lord Ainz's exquisite form. Immediately, Albedo tells her to go find someone else to bother with her flirting. Not long after, both women begin to exchange words, and as they're about to fight, Lord Ainz stops them. That lord. These ladies are thirsty. Eventually, Ainz learns from Shaltir that she's about to leave with Sabas on her assignment, and she came to have one last look at him and say a proper goodbye. Sometime later, Lord Ainz heads to the Erantel Adventurer Guild in his knight armor with one of his mates, Narbril. Everyone watches them suspiciously, and they go to the table to get a room. When the attendant sees that Ainz is only a low-level copper adventurer, he believes he has no money. However, Ainz is forced to have that tag because he's just registering and easily pays the fee. When shown his room, Ainz is stopped by some of the men. He walks past them and one of them corners him and suggests his maid kiss him, but Ainz throws the man into a nearby table. However, the impact breaks a table, and the lady at the table shouts at Ainz for breaking the healing potion she saved for months to buy. When the woman tells Ainz to give him a healing potion, Narbril almost slices her in half, but Ainz quickly stops her and gives the lady one of his potions. When they get inside, Narbril complains that he doesn't have to stay in this small room, but Ainz doesn't seem to mind. While talking, he asks her what her thoughts on humans are, and Narbril tells him she thinks they're complete garbage. Ainz is shocked that she's just like Albedo, so he asks asks her to control her hostility while in public. He also tells her to call him Momon in this city instead of Lord RIZZ, but she becomes uncomfortable and calls him Momon, sir, because she can't bear to call him by his name. He also tells her she'll be called Nabe. Later, RIZZ tells her their main objective is to gather information about this new world they're in. They will disguise themselves as low-level adventurers and perform quests and quickly rank higher until they can get more information. However, their money is unusual because their currency from Yggdrasil is useless here and is gold. RIZZ explains that using it means publicly announcing they're from someone else, so he states that they'd find a job. Meanwhile, the adventurer lady from the guild, Brita, takes the potion RIZZ gave her to a boy named Enfirea so it can be analyzed. The boy she gives the potion to shows his grandma, Lizzie, a famous pharmacist. Lizzie uses a spell to appraise the potion and says, "This potion is extremely rare, like something from a fairy tale." Lizzie says it's worth a lot and suggests Brita sell it to her because people might attack her if they see it with her, but Brita hesitates. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, other adventurers speak badly of RIZZ because he's a copper-level adventurer who probably got such expensive armor from his dad. RIZZ ignores them because he's worried that neither he nor Narbrel can read the language on the job postings. Eventually, he randomly grabs a posting, but the lady at the table explains that the job requires a myth-level adventurer. RIZZ explains that his companion is a third-tier magic user and he's similar to her, so a lower quest is useless. Regardless, the woman insists that the rules are rules. RIZZ apologizes and asks her to sign him up for the hardest copper-level mission, and she gladly does, but this was RIZZ's plan all along. Suddenly, some group named the Swords of Darkness asks Momon to join their team. Shortly after, they have an introductory session. Peter's the boss, Dine's the druid, Luke's the eyes and ears, and a young boy named Ninya is their prodigy magic caster. Luke seems to like Nabe and waves at her, but she just ignores him. Ninya is quite humble and says his adeptness at learning magic was from birth, and he speaks about Enfirea, a more skilled magic caster who can use all magic items without training. Eventually, Peter explains that they have an off-the-books job to take out monsters around the city and get rewards for it. Before they leave, Momon shows them his face, but he creates an illusion of a human's face. Finally, Luke confirms that Nabe is simply Momon's ally, so he publicly asks her out on a date because he's in love. However, Nabe calls him a dog and promises to cut his tongue if he doesn't sit, but Luke becomes more infatuated. When he doesn't shut up, Peter knocks him down. They head out soon, but while they're going, they learn that Enfirea has personally requested them for a job. Annoyed, Nabe attempts to attack Enfirea, but Momon gives her a knock and tells her to be reasonable. However, Momon explains that he'd have to postpone Enfirea's job because he's already taken a gig, but Peter asks him to hear Enfirea out first. When Momon learns that it's a bodyguarding gig, he suggests that Enfirea take along the rest of the team too, because their skills are more attuned to protecting others. Enfirea agrees, but Momon asks him how such a well-known citizen like him found him. So, Enfirea explains that he heard about how he easily took out several higher-ranking adventurers who were bothering him at the inn, so he decided to reach out to him because his previous bodyguard moved away. Momon accepts the explanation but has an odd feeling that something is off. That evening, a lady named Clementine heads to the Erantel Community Cemetery with a crazy look on her face. She enters one of the tombs and summons a grumpy old man named Khajiit. When she shows him a treasure of the slain theocracy called the Crown of Wisdom, he's suddenly excited. However, when she explains that she snatched it off the head of the previous owners, Khajiit reminds her that this treasure seals the soul of its bearer and is dangerous. However, she asks him if Enfirea, who can use any magical item, can make this item work, but he refuses to answer her. She explains her plans to kidnap Enfirea and offers to help Khajiit in his ritual if he helps her, so he changes his mind. The next morning, Enfirea and the group head out of town to go pick up the materials he needs in Carne Village. While traveling, Enfirea suggests they take a break around a certain place, and Peter tells everyone to be careful because things will be dangerous from now on. Momo recalls he has to be careful because he can't use most of his magic items in this armor, but he plans to get Nabe to use 5th tier magic if things get rougher. Soon after, Luke tells Nabe he'll protect her with his skills, but Nabe simply asks Momon if she can squash Luke yet. Momon cautions her so she stops, but Luke is still certain a lady has the hots for him. Meanwhile, the other guys are ashamed on Luke's behalf. Suddenly, Ninya mentions that they're in the territory of the Wise King. Apparently, this Wise King is a very powerful mythical creature. It's physically strong and has terrible snake tails, but Momon mentions that he's excited to meet this creature. While this is happening, Demiurge goes to Lord RIZZ's room and finds Albedo cuddling with Lord RIZZ's pillow without clothes. Demiurge asks her what she's doing, so she explains that she's rubbing her scent into everything so she's the first thing he smells when he returns. Demiurge doesn't know what to say but realizes Lord RIZZ probably won't notice since he doesn't sleep. However, he tells her not to overdo it, and Albedo reluctantly agrees. As if that's not crazy enough, she brings out a life-size body pillow of Lord RIZZ. Demiurge can't believe his eyes, and she explains that she's even made socks and clothes for their first child. Apparently, she's made clothes for the first 5 years, and it's clear this lady is cuckoo. At Erantel's outskirts, Momon speaks to Ninya about magical practices. He learns that their technology level is that of the Middle Ages, but the sophistication of their magic is on a different level. Soon after, Luke asks Nabe if she's always super relaxed because she knows he's keeping her safe. Nabe sharply tells him she has Momon by her side, and when Luke jokes that she's in a relationship with Momon, she mistakenly blurts out that Lady Albedo is the only one Momon needs on his side. Momon reminds her to keeps silent and requests that Luke stop poking into their personal lives. Suddenly, Luke tells the rest that some monsters are coming towards them from nearby. It's clear they can't avoid the fight, so Peter tells Aniplot to stay safe in the cart while the rest of them handle it. Peter soon gives them each their support responsibilities, and they all attack the monsters. The adventurers are fighting. They notice Momon and Nabe casually walking towards a huge ogre. As the ogre attacks, Momon easily slices the monster in half with one strike. A few other ogre attack, but Momon easily slices them in half while the others fight the goblins. At the sight of that, the other ogres make a run for it, but Nabe sends a chain of lightning through them that takes them all out. After taking them down, Ninja cuts some parts of the ogres to exchange for rewards from the guild. The other fighters proclaim that they didn't know Momon and Nabe was so strong. When Dine speculates that Momon may be stronger than the royal head warrior, Nabe tells them he's far stronger. They're in awe, but Momon assures them that their team will be able to destroy greater odds with ease as time passes. That evening, they all enjoy a meal. However, Momon doesn't know what to do because drinking the food will cause it to seep out of his bones. When Luke notices Nabe isn't eating, he proposes to cool it in his mouth first and feed it to her, but she refrains herself from smashing his head. However, Momon explains to them that it's considered impolite in their faith to eat with others the same day they take another's life, so the others respect it. Suddenly, Momon asks where the name Swords of Darkness came from, so Peter explains that it's a reference to the old legend of the 13 heroes. Apparently, they named their party after the sword of one of the fabled warriors. When Peter doesn't say anything else, Momon panics that Peter must expect him to know about the 13 heroes, but Nabe saves his behind by saying she doesn't know about them. They explain that one of the 13 heroes was a black knight who wielded a sword called the Sword of Darkness. Apparently, their aim when they started their group was to find this sword, but now they carry some small black daggers as a representation. When Luke mentions that the blades represent the creation of their team, which is important to him, Dine admits that's the first time Luke said something mildly meaningful. While they argue, Momon realizes he used to go on adventures like this with his friends. When Ninja asks Momon if he was ever on a team, he explains that he was once on a team. He tells him the story of when he was weak and alone, then a knight saved his life and led him to his comrades. Apparently that changed his life, and he admits he will never forget the days he spent with them as long as he lives. When Ninja mentions that he hopes Momon finds other allies like the first, Momon sharply mentions that that day will never come and leaves to eat elsewhere. Nabe leaves too, and Ninja realizes he said something wrong. Peter guesses that Momon's comrades might all be gone. He has that aura. Ninja feels bad for saying that, and he wonders why he was so thoughtless, especially when he knows how it feels to lose his sister, whom he loves. They soon begin to chat about Momon's skill, and Peter mentions that Momon's skill might be as great as the top adventurer, which intrigues Aniplot. When Aniplot learns that Momon took off his helmet earlier and they saw his face, he frantically asks to know what country he's from. However, the group explains that they aren't sure, which makes Aniplot sad. When the group mentions that the ladies must flock around Momon, Aniplot confesses that there's a girl he likes in Carney and he's afraid she'll fall for Momon. Suddenly, Luke claims he can teach Aniplot all the ways to make a woman's knees bow, but Peter knocks Luke down with a piece of bread. Soon after, the guys promise Aniplot he can get the girl and promise to help him. Meanwhile, Clementine eliminates the guard of an information peddler and threatens to torture him. He quickly gives her the information, so she confesses that she likes bloodshed and torture. Suddenly, she stabs him with a knife that takes over his mind, so she gets more information out of him. Shortly after, Clementine finds Khajiit making a zombie in the temple. Khajiit corrects her about killing people randomly because he needs people in Rantel to be alive for him to turn the city into a city of death. There's a ritual he wants to do to turn the capital into a pit of undead people overnight. He plans to use an orb to collect the power of death and realize the dream of immortality. When he warns her to stop playing around, she rushes at him with a sword, but he blocks it with a wall of undead. Clementine claims she was playing around and leaves. While she leaves, Khajiit realizes he'll have to keep a closer eye on Clementine. The next morning, they all continue their journey and Ninja sneaks peeks at Momon because of what happened. However, Momon recalls that Ninja had come to apologize earlier that day. He believes it was foolish for him to react so strongly against Ninja like that, and he let his emotions control him. Luke tries to break the ice because everyone is silent, so he suggests they relax, but he's told this place is dangerous, and Ninja mentions that there are dragons close by. To break the ice, Momon asks Ninja to help him get the name of the dragons that can control nature, and that excites Ninja. Also, Momon knows that dragons were the strongest in Yggdrasil, so he knows he needs to be cautious. They continue their journey, and Aniplot notices a huge fence that wasn't here the last time it came. It turns out there's an army of goblins behind the fence, and the men soon find out they're surrounded. When no one drops their weapon, the leader of the goblins stops everyone and says they'd rather not have to fight if they can avoid it. The goblin leader confesses that Momon is giving him bad vibes, so he proposes that they reason through this. Suddenly, Henri speaks with the goblin leader. Aniplot calls out Henri, and Henri is excited to see him. Immediately, the guys realize this is the girl Aniplot has the hots for. Also, Momon realizes that Henri must have used one of the horns he gave her. Later on, they head to Carney village, and Aniplot doesn't know what to say when he learns she's lost both of her parents. He attempts to touch her and express that he'll protect her, but he's too much of a dork. She soon assures him that her little sister is keeping her going, so Aniplot changes the topic. He starts to stutter and sweat bullets. Then he speaks about how they're both of marrying age and how he can take care of her and her sister. hamster. When Henri asks him what he means, he doesn't have the guts to say more and asks her to just let him know if she needs anything. At that moment, Henri hits him with the baddest friend-zoning line in the book by saying he's sweet and she's lucky to have such a good friend. If a lady ever called me sweet, I'd properly look for a good spot to commit seppuku. Enfire accepts his situation and asks about the goblins, so Henri explains that they appeared after she used the magical item their savior gave her. Enfire asks about this gown, so Henri mentions that he's amazing and is surprised Enfire doesn't know about him. Enfire's stomach turns upside down when he hears her call him amazing and awesome. When she tells him about his power, Enfire suspects he might be a hero class. When she mentions that the man gave a red potion that healed her wounds instantly, Enfire remembers the potions. Furthermore, Henri mentions that he had a female warrior with him named Albedo, so Enfire realizes that Momon is Ain's Wolgaun. He realizes that Momon must be a hero amongst heroes who can cast high-level spells, so he becomes afraid because he's been trying to learn his secrets. Meanwhile, Ain's watches as the goblins train the villagers on how to use arrows, and he's impressed by their progress in a short time. Suddenly, Enfire appears and asks Momon if he's actually the Ain's Wolgaun who saved this village. Momon denies it, but Enfire explains he's not going to reveal his identity, but he wanted to thank him for saving Henri, which is his reason for living. Enfire also confesses what happened with the red potion and mentions that he dishonestly asked for Momon to escort him because he wanted to learn how to create the potion also. Enfire asks for his forgiveness, but Momon explains that he hasn't wronged him as long as he wasn't going to use the knowledge for evil. When Enfire mentions that he's the only one who knows about this, Momon asks him to keep it that way. Later on, Narbril apologizes for compromising this mission by saying Albedo's name. She immediately attempts to eliminate herself by atoning with her sword, but Momon tells her to sheath her sword and rather learn from it. Shortly after, they head into the forest and Enfire explains that he wants the adventurers to scare off the creature called the Wise King instead of killing him. Apparently, the Wise King is what keeps monsters from coming to Carne, so Momon agrees to try. The others refuse because they know the Wise King is a mythical creature, so Momon suggests that they let him and Nave scout ahead for a bit. While moving forward, Ains recognizes that Aura is nearby doing her investigation. Aura soon appears and offers to help them find the Wise King. Narbril asks him why he wants to take out the creature when he's already shown so much strength, but Ains feels besting. A legendary magical creature is something big enough to get his name to spread everywhere. Meanwhile, Aura moves deeper into the forest with the help of some creatures of nature until she reaches a cave where the Wise King stays. She wanted to take the creature herself, but she's bound to leave it to Lord Ains. The Wise King soon chases after her, and the adventurers become worried when they realize something big is heading towards them. However, Momon tells them to leave Wise King to them and tells the others to leave. After they leave, he wonders why he sent them away since they won't be here to witness the fight. Soon after, the Wise King appears and Ains prepares his twin sword. The Wise King attacks him, but Ains blocks him. However, the creature hides in the woods and tells them to withdraw so he can spare them, but Ains tells the creature to show its face, and it soon appears. It turns out to be a huge mythical hamster, and when Ains looks surprised, the creature is certain Ains is scared. Suddenly, Ains asks the creature if it's a Jungarian hamster, and the creature comes out and explains it is. The hamster looks harmless in the light, and it asks Ains how he knows his species. Confused, Ains explains that one of his friends used to have a pet that looked just like him. The hamster becomes excited and asks to find the rest of this species because he has to create offspring. However, Ains reminds him that his size will hinder that, and the hamster agrees that those little ladies won't be able to take his package. Eventually, the hamster tells Ains to come at him so they can fight like warriors, but Ains considers this embarrassing and realizes this was a complete waste of his time. The hamster keeps running his mouth about how he'd make meals of them and how they need to fight for their lives for the survival of the fittest. At this point, I'm just waiting for Ains to knock this guy out with a punch. Disappointed, Ains refuses to fight this creature, so he uses a basic level 1 skill called Aura of Despair, and the hamster falls on its back. Aura suggests that Ains eliminate the hamster so she can use its body, but the hamster begs for its life. Soon after, Momon takes the creature out and shocks the others. He tells the rest that the creature is now under his power, but for some reason, the men are in awe of the strength and wisdom of the creature. That confuses Momon because he doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. Suddenly, Enfire interjects and explains that monsters will attack Carney Village if Momon takes the Wise King away. Because of this, Enfire asks to become part of Momon's team so he can learn how to protect Enri and Carney Village. He offers to do anything Momon wants, but Momon humbly rejects his offer. However, he assures Enfire that he'll lend his strength to guard the village, and that makes the boy happy. Later that evening, Momon heads towards the guild to register the magical hamster. Enfire thanks Momon for helping him get the highest amount of materials, but the mouthy hamster reminds him that he got so much because of his master's strength, referring to Momon. When Momon rides the hamster away, the people watch in surprise. Momon's pride is ruined because he didn't get the tough look of a monster slayer he was targeting since this monster looks like a donut. Meanwhile, Enfire and the adventurers get home but find Clementine waiting for them. Enfire thinks Clementine is a customer, but when they detect Clementine's hostility, the group moves in to defend Enfire. Clementine tells Enfire that she wants him to use his magical ability to use the Crown of Wisdom item and summon an army of the dead alive. The men demand to know who she is, but Clementine tells them she's the last person that will see them alive before they are eliminated painfully. When she begins to laugh like a maniac, the team tells Ninya to escape with Enfirea. Before they can escape, Khajiit shows up behind them and tells Clementine to stop playing around and finish things already. She feels bad but asks him to place a spell to cover up their screams so she can play with at least one of them. You can't get crazier than this. Meanwhile, Momon and Nabe successfully register the animal with the name Hamsuke. The people are surprised that the animal can talk, and they wonder how a copper plate can afford such a creature. Suddenly, Enfirea's grandmother Lizzie soon shows up and is surprised to learn that this overgrown rodent was the famous wise king of the forest. Soon after, Momon escorts Lizzie to the store, and immediately when they get there, Momon senses that something isn't right. He soon follows a path and finds the embers of the Sword of Darkness zombified. The men attack them, but Momon easily cuts off their heads. Momon realizes Enfirea isn't there, but he also notices Ninya wasn't zombified. When he checks Ninya's unconscious body, he realizes Ninya was actually a girl trying to cover her parts because the group didn't want a girl in the mix. At that moment, Momon promises himself that whoever did this will pay. Later, Lizzie becomes frantic when she can't find Enfirea. Meanwhile, Mom notices the assailants didn't steal anything, so he realizes that Enfirea must be what they came for. Eventually, Momon tells Lizzie that they'll have to go against at least a third-tier spellcaster to find Enfirea. He knows the assailants were so confident that they would get away that they didn't hide the bodies but advertised their power to make someone undead. However, Momon assures Lizzie that she'd have to make a request to the guild for him to save Enfirea. She begs him to help, but he requests everything she possesses as payment. She's forced to agree, but she calls them demons who are out to get her soul. After she agrees, Momon notices the criminals took their victims' adventurer plates even though they're worthless. Suddenly, Momon is contacted by one of his subjects about some information she has, and she also notifies him that Lady Albedo asks him to contact her. Momon continues his search and believes that the plates were taken as hunting trophies. Because of this, he gives Nabe the locate object scroll to track down the plates. However, in case their enemy has cast a spell to detect location spells, Momon brings out several spell scrolls to create a cover and counter their detection. Nabe soon begins to cast the spells, and Momon realizes they have to be careful because collecting information with magic is dangerous and can result in death. Momon realizes they need to attack hard and fast. Nabe soon finds out the location is in the middle of the cemetery, so they use a crystal monitor spell and find Enfirea among an army of undead. Immediately, he suggests they launch an attack, but Momon explains that the army of the undead has something planned and is prepared for a reckless attack. He's happy that an enemy of this scale will get his name to spread wide, but he knows they have to move fast. Soon after, Momon tells Lizzie the enemies are in the cemetery, and he asks her to inform the townsfolk and the guild about the army of the undead. Meanwhile, at the citadel wall, the guards are shocked to see a huge army of undead. They try to notify the reserves quickly and try to hold the army away until backup arrives. The undead climb over each other over the gates, and the soldiers are forced to retreat because of their number. While running, they run into Momon. They're disappointed when they see he's just a useless copper plate and tell him to leave so he doesn't get killed. Momon simply asks Nabe for his sword and tells the soldiers to look carefully. Momon throws his sword into the head of a giant undead monster and knocks it down with one hit. The soldiers are shocked, so Momon tells them to open the gate. However, the soldiers are certain that he has a death wish, so he decides to jump over the gate. Nabe also flies over the gate, and the mouthy Hamsuke tells Nabe not to worry about him because he's right behind her, as if she cared in the first place. In a matter of seconds, the sound of the undead stops, and the soldiers can't believe those three were able to defeat so many undead on their own. The soldiers remember Momon's name, and they wonder if he's really just a copper plate. One of them speculates that he may be the fabled adamantite player he's heard rumors about. Meanwhile, Momon continues to cut down undead monsters like he's breaking piñatas. Moments after, he breaks them all down, and the bones of the undead, which are still technically alive, stare at him in awe. They probably didn't tell them all of this would happen in undead orientation camp. Meanwhile, Nabe carries Hamsuke while she flies, and he apologizes for causing them this trouble. Momon explains that the undead are naturally drawn to the living, and the undead will try to overwhelm them if he was down here. When they run into another army of undead, Momon realizes it will take them forever to cut through this. Nabe suggests they get help from Nazarick, but Momon refuses because it defeats the purpose of the quest. To create a path, Momon summons two second-tier undead named Jack the Ripper and the Collector. These noobs don't realize they're using undead to attack the actual god of the undead. The second-tier undead are obviously crazy monsters that love nothing but destruction, and they quickly begin to create a path for them to walk through. Not long after, Momon and Nabe find Khajiit and the group of Zuranorn performing a ritual, while they distract the rest of the undead by putting Hamsuke on a threat. Using clairvoyance, Momon mentions Khajiit's name and tells them to stop wasting time on this dull ritual. He also tells Khajiit to show them where Enfirea is, and to also show them where Clementine is. When Momon asks if Clementine only fights weak people, she shows up, but Khajiit tells her to go back inside. She steps out and introduces herself, and Momon tells her his name and says he's her executioner. Impressed, Clementine asks how he found them, so Momon tells her she led them here. He soon tells her that the plates are what led them here, and he tells Nabe to exterminate Khajiit and the others while he deals with Clementine. Momon calls Clementine to follow him away, and she happily does. Meanwhile, Khajiit thinks Nabe is harmless, but she soon casts twin electro spears that shock them figuratively and literally. However, Khajiit is not affected, and he laughs laughs at her impressive skill. In response, Nabe tells him to roll over and give up the ghost like a good rodent. Meanwhile, Clementine asks Momon if he came here to avenge his friends that she took out. She laughs about how Nina was just a girl, but Momon tells him those adventurers were just colleagues. This saddens Clementine because she wanted to get pleasure from his lamentation that she killed his friends. In addition, Nabe mentions that he's not taking vengeance, and he would have done the same thing if he was in her shoes and they were in his way. But he explains that her killing them has brought him a valuable asset, and now she's in his way. Amused, Clementine tells him there's no way he can defeat her by himself since he's left his spellcaster behind. Clementine explains that she's taken out many people and she knows all the people strong enough to fight her on the continent. However, Momon offers to give her a handicap as mercy to her, but that annoys her and she promises to show him why people fear her. In response, Momon tells her she's a joke and tells her to shut up and fight. Meanwhile, Khajiit assures Nabe that she's in his territory of the undead and she'll be taken out. Suddenly, Khajiit summons an undead dragon, and Khajiit explains that this dragon is completely resistant to magic. He's certain she'll be eliminated, but Nabe brings out her sword and says she'll just beat it to extinction. With one strike, she knocks down the monster and Khajiit can't believe his eyes. Khajiit becomes frantic and he heals the monster. He soon reinforces several spells to increase the dragon's strength, and Nabe casts similar spells to protect herself. She jumps in to attack the dragon, but it knocks her backwards. Eventually, Khajiit decides to show the greatness of his power, so he summons a second dragon. He's worried that he's had to use all the negative energy he's collected thus far, which is a setback, but he's certain he can get it tenfold once he takes her and the folks in Erantal out. Immediately, Nabe runs towards the monsters and avoids their dangerous tails. Suddenly, one of the monsters lays its claw on her, but Nabe pushes it back with just her bare hands, and Khajiit doesn't understand how a normal human can have such physical strength. Nabe explains to him that she was created by supreme beings that even the gods of this earth couldn't fathom, but Khajiit doesn't believe her. Meanwhile, Clementine steps back from fighting and jokes that Momon just has strength but has no precision with his sword. However, he tells her to come attack him since she's confident she can beat any warrior. Suddenly, Momon notices two skeletal dragons, and Clementine is certain Nabe's cooked. Momon stretches his sword at Clementine and asks her to get past it, so she moves towards him with lightning speed and attacks. However, when she attacks, Momon blocks it, and when she hits his armor, she realizes his armor won't crack. She soon goes again to find the weak spot in his armor and dodges his sword this time. When she jumps behind him, she sticks her sword in the hole in his helmet, but it doesn't work. Eventually, Momon thanks her for teaching him more about martial arts. She wonders what kind of warrior doesn't know the basics of martial arts and how he's still alive after she stabbed his head. Eventually, Momon tells her he has to leave because he doesn't have time to play. Momon soon tells Narbril to show the power of Nazarick. He drops his sword and tells Clementine to come at him. Meanwhile, Nabe begins to pant, so Khajiit offers to be merciful to her if she surrenders. When she tells him humans are too cocky, she hears Lord Ains tell her to show them the power of Nazarick. Immediately, she tells Khajiit she will no longer fight him as Nabe, but as Narbril of the Pleiades. When the dragons attack her, she immediately teleports out of sight and appears in the sky. Suddenly, she starts to fly, and Khajiit doesn't understand why Narbril isn't running and wonders if she really thinks she has a chance against dragons that have complete magical resistance. However, Narbril pulls off her clothing and displays her armor. She tells Khajiit that he has the fortune of facing the servant of the Lord of the Tomb of Nazarick. The dragons attack her, but she teleports behind Khajiit and stabs him from behind. She tells him she won't take him out yet, but will let him watch her take out his dragons. She soon asks him if he really believes these dragons are immune to magic and tells him to learn more about magic. Khajiit believes she's bluffing, but Narbril explains their magical resistance is against tier magic and below, but she can cast higher. However, Khajiit believes no one in this world can cast tier magic because that power belongs to the gods. So, Narbril casts a 7-tier magic called Chain Dragon Lightning and breaks the dragons with one blast. The energy also hits Khajiit and he's immediately turned into ashes. This amuses Narbril, so she plans to take his ashes back as a souvenir. Meanwhile, Clementine believes that Momon is out of his mind if he believes he can take her out without any martial arts skill. When Momon tells her to quit yapping, she boosts her abilities threefold and bends down in an odd way. With the way she's bent, you'd think she learned her martial arts from the Kama Sutra. Annoyed, Clementine rushes at Momon and stabs his helmet with her daggers, but he doesn't move an inch. Laughing like a maniac, she uses the power of the blades to set him on fire, but Momon simply grabs a hold of her like she's his fiancée. He's amused by her weapon, and when he turns off the fire, Clementine can't believe he's still alive. To explain things to her, he removes his armor and shows her his undead form. He asks how it felt fighting a sword-wielding magic caste and refuses to let her go. He explains that there was no need to fight a mongrel of her level seriously, because even his weakest spell would be a waste on her. This furiously annoys Clementine, and Ainz asks her what the matter is and calls her the B word. Whoa! After pulling out the daggers from his face, Ainz crushes her against herself, and the impact is so strong that the pin holding her bra starts to pull off, releasing her jugs. She frantically punches him and tells him to let go, so Ainz tells her he'll give her the slow and painful treatment she gave the others. As she fights, he continues to crush her until blood starts to pour out of every hole in her body. When the light seeps out of her, Ainz walks away. Soon after, Hamsuke runs after Ainz, but he becomes shocked when he sees his face. However, Nabe stomps on Hamsuke's face and asks Lord Ainz why he doesn't eliminate this creature. Lord Ainz soon tells Nade to pick up anything useful from the corpse and leave the rest to the authorities. Just like Batman, when Ainz steps in, he finds Enfira blinded with the crown of wisdom on his head. Ainz knows he can cure his blindness with healing magic, but he knows it'll be hard to break the control over Enfira's mind. He appraises the crown of wisdom item and learns it can't be replicated. Even though he'd like to take Enfira and the item back to Nazarick, he doesn't want to taint his name, so he destroys the item. When Ainz steps out in his armor, Hamsuk apologizes to Ainz for his previous overreaction. He pledges his loyalty, and Ainz approves it, but Hamsuke laments that his master taking his pledge so lightly hurts his delicate feelings. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a lady shouts at Sebas for getting her food that tastes like dog food. She orders Sebas to get her out of this place, and he receives her orders. Furthermore, the lady tells her driver named Zach that she'd like to leave this place immediately. When the lady angrily goes upstairs, Sebas follows her. Once inside, she bows to him and apologizes for taking their performance too far. Sebas corrects that there's no need for her to lower her bed because he's supposed to be her butler while they're pulling off this act. The lady, named Solution, apologizes BQA Sebas is her superior since she's a member of the Pleiades. Eventually, Sebas decides to notify Lady Shaltere that her time to act has come. He also asks if Zach, the human with them, is performing as expected. Using her telepathic vision, Solution confirms that Zach is conniving with a man outside to attack them outside of the city and play with her. Sebas is glad to hear that everything is going to plan, so Solution asks for the permission to have Zach once he's no longer useful. Sebas asks why, so she explains that he wants her, so she wants him to have a taste of heaven before he sees Hades. Later on, Zach rides his Sebas and Solution in his coach and signals to his accomplices using a lantern. Meanwhile, Shaltier is with them and learns that their unfortunate prey has taken the bait. Their plan is to find a martial art or magic user that will suit Lord Ainz. Suddenly, Sebas asks Shaltier why she and Lady Aura do not get along well. Shaltier explains that there's no bad blood between the two of them, but she teases her because her creator decided she should. Apparently, Aura's creator is the sister to the creator of Shaltier. Shaltier mentions that she heard her blessed creator talking about it with Ainz. In a flashback, Shaltier's creator laments that he was going to Guntu, a hardcore game he just got, only to find out that his sister is the voice actor. In the present, Shaltier explains that voice actors bring things to life in a godlike way, and the rest of them are glad to learn about the supreme beings, which are just bum humans. Soon after, the carriage is stopped, and several men ambush the carriage. When the carriage is open, Shalteri steps out and one of the men tries to touch her melons. Before he can touch her, his hand falls clean off, so she slices his head off with one move of her hand. Suddenly, the man's blood is drained by Shaltera, and the men prepare to fight. Shaltera immediately releases the vampire bride's whiter and they begin to eliminate the men. Zach is in shock, but Solution appears with him and shows him her melons. Excited, he begins to think with his second head and places his hand on her jugs. However, instead of feeling its softness, he finds himself being sucked into Solution's body while she laughs maniacally. After taking out all the men, Shalter learns that these humans have a nest where they have one man named Brain. Apparently, Brain fights on equal terms with Gazef, the royal head warrior. That intrigues Shalter, and she believes Brain sounds like the perfect candidate. Soon after, Solution and Sebas head to the capital to collect some information for Lord Ainz, while Shaltir heads to the lair of the bandits. Soon after, Brain hears the men in their hideout screaming in pain and goes to investigate. When he steps out, he learns that two women are attacking him, but he finds that funny. Cockily, he immediately tells the man to head back while he goes to deal with this. Meanwhile, Shaltirs takes the men out and drains their blood. While they're going in, one of her vampire brides is suddenly cut by Brain, but she heals, so Brain is excited to see their vampires. Shalter tells him he won't have a chance since he's alone, but he admits that he doesn't need them. Shalter decides to face Brain herself and hopes he will entertain her well before perishing. However, Brain is certain that she can't be faster than his Godflash strike and can't get past his perception field. When she steps into his field of vision, he moves quickly and lands his sword on her neck, but she grabs the blade before it reaches her neck. She steps back and asks him to try another attack if he has one, and starts to taunt him when his hand begins to shake. Annoyed, Brain continues attacking her, but she blocks his attack with one hand. When Shalter mentions that Brain is just as weak even with his martial arts, and when he realizes he's hopeless, he makes a run for it. Amused, Shalter uses the blood she got to activate her true vampire form. Meanwhile, the men inside prepare a barricade and see Brain running back to them. They're excited to see him, but he runs past them. If they had any brains in their heads, they'd run, but they wait till Shaltir shows up. They fire arrows at her, but nothing changes, and she begins to suck them dry of blood. In a matter of moments, all the men are eliminated. Shaltir goes further into the lair, but is angry to find out that Brain has escaped. Suddenly, one of the vampire brides informs Shaltir that other men have surrounded the lair. When they go outside, the men outside recognize that she's a vampire, and they're told to cover their blades with silver and not to look into her eyes. Shalter knows she's supposed to capture them, but she feels this rage in her to rip them limb from limb, and in a matter of moments, she cuts off the head of the men. In a matter of moments, she cuts them all down, save Britta, the adventurer that Moment had encountered. Suddenly, Britta throws the potion that Ainz gave her at Shalter and runs away. Surprised to see the potion, Shalter captures Britta and takes control of her mind. She asks Britta where she got the potion and learns that Lord Ainz had given her the potion. After further investigation, Shaltair learns that there are more adventurers nearby and another ranger has been sent back to Rantel to get support. Annoyed that she's messed up, Shaltair summons vampire wolves to devour every human in this forest, worried that Lord Ainz will be angry with her. Suddenly, the vampire wolves are all taken out and Shaltair runs to the adventurer's station. She finds the strongest and rushes towards him, but the captain tells an old woman to use the power of the dress she's wearing. As the old woman prepares the dress, Shaltair attacks with a lance called the Spewit Lance, but the leader stops her and gives the woman a chance to prepare her dress. Shaltair pushes the captain away and rushes towards the woman, but the overwhelming power of her dress is released and overshadows Shaltair. Before Shaltair is overtaken, she releases an attack that eliminates both the wearer of the dress and her bodyguard. Shortly after, in Nazareth, Albedo reports to Lord Ainz that Shaltair has betrayed them. Ainz checks the master source panel, and when he sees Shaltair's name in red, he realizes why Albedo believes she's betrayed them. Albedo mentions that the vampire brides have both perished, but Ainz wonders if Shaltair may have just been eliminated. However, Albedo points out that Shaltair's name would have disappeared if she'd been eliminated. Ainz knows that in Yggdrasil, the status marker can show him if a third party has used mind control magic to temporarily turn her into an enemy. But this should be impossible, since Shaltair is undead and has a skill that should nullify all mind controls. Eventually, Ainz asks Albedo if it's possible that Shaltair has fallen under the influence of one of the martial arts or talents in this strange new world. Albedo confesses she doesn't know, but suggests they send a hunting party to take Shaltair down. However, Ainz considers it too hasty and decides to confirm if she's revolted of her own free will or not. He knows he needs to find a way to counter this if it's possible to control the minds of the NPCs so that Nazareth won't crumble. Sometime later, Ainz watches Shaltair, who's under mind control, through his magic crystal. He's worried because he realizes he'd have to use a god-level item. Suddenly, Narbril gives him information about a desperate call for help from the Adventurers Guild about a vampire that has been terrorizing the outside of Rantel. Shortly after, Ainz goes to the guild as Momon and meets with the guildmaster named Ainzok, as well as some other mithril-level adventurers. Ainzok tells them about the vampire attack and describes the creature. Ainzok tells them they have to keep the monster away from the city, and one of them, named Igvarj, finds it interesting that Momon was bumped up to mithril level after the quest at the cemetery. The mithrils wonder if this vampire is linked with the incident at the cemetery, which was organized by members of the Zuranorn. However, Momon assures them that this vampire isn't linked with the Zuranorn group. When Ainzok asks him how he can be so sure, our guy makes something up and says the vampire is famously known as Hanyu Pianko. He explains that he's been tracking this monster for years and assures them his team will take care of this monster easily because he has an 8-tier magic within a crystal. The mithrils can't believe it. 8-tier is just a myth, and Igvarj says it's a fake. Ainzok asks Momon what he wants in exchange, and Momon states he wants a promotion to a higher level. When Igvarj insists he's going, Momon explains he'll just slow him down. Annoyed, Igvarj insults him, so Momon lets him follow along but assures him it means certain elimination. Shortly after, they head out and Momon ensures that Igvarj's team members are ambushed and eliminated. They tie Igvarj to a tree and Ainz tells Mar to take Igvarj out. After that, Ainz tells them to take their bodies to Nazareth to see if they can create high-level undead creatures with their corpses. Ainz also tells them to take Hamsuke with them to Nazareth, but Hamsuke complains to his master that he's afraid of being eaten, but Narbril assures him that no one would dare eat Lord Ainz's pet. Moments later, Ainz and Albedo approach Shaltair and Ainz calls to her. Shaltair doesn't respond, and Ainz realizes that Shaltair's mind has been taken over after a battle, but she can't move since she wasn't given any orders. To break the hold, Ainz brings out a super rare ring called Shooting Star that allows the wearer to wish for anything 3 times a day. Albedo is intrigued, and Ainz hopes she's impressed because he used his entire summer bonus to purchase this ring from the game. Albedo admits that she's only heard about this level of power in rumors, especially because it's more powerful than 10th tier magic. Ainz assures her that he should be able to release Shaltair in no time, and he commands the ring to cure Shaltair of the effects of the mind. However, the power doesn't work, and Ainz realizes that someone here is stronger than super tier magic. In a panic, Ainz takes Albedo and teleports away from there. When they appear elsewhere, Ainz breaks things in anger, but the force from beyond suddenly calms him down. When Albedo asks him what happened, Ainz explains that the only thing able to withstand super tier magic is a world level item. He hadn't expected this world to contain such a thing, so he orders they raise the security level of Nazareth to level and order every guardian to return home immediately. Meanwhile, Sebas and Solution hear about the orders, but Sebas refuses to head back because he was given special orders to continue with the mission in Rantel. In Nazareth, Ainz, Albedo, and Yuri Alpha teleport into the treasury. Once inside, Ainz uses a secret code to allow them inside. Ainz also asks Albedo if she knows about Pandora's actor, and she admits she knows this person's power rivals her own, but she's not met him. This person was created by the masters to be the guardian of the treasury and the finances of Nazareth. When they enter, Albedo finds Lord Tabula, her creator, but she becomes angry when she realizes it's an imposter. She goes into defensive mode and attempts to destroy the monster, but Ainz soon reveals that this creature is a doppelganger that took up the form of Lord Tabula. When Pandora's actor changes his form back, he excitedly greets Lord Ainz. Lord Ainz tells him he's in need of some some world items, the Pandora actor overreacts about how powerful world items are and talks about how world items show the greatness of the supreme beings. He performs a show, and RIZZ realizes this. Pandora actor is so lame, and the ladies wonder what the heck is wrong with this guy. The ladies are confused, and RIZZ starts to panic that the ladies must be judging him because of the embarrassing personality he designed for this guy. RIZZ becomes overwhelmed several times, but the power from beyond calms him down. At some point, the Pandora actor calls Albedo and Yuri heavenly ladies, but this annoys Albedo. Albedo tells the Pandora actor that she's the leader of the Guardians and Yuri is the second in command of the Pleiades, so he must show them respect. Immediately, the Pandora actor apologizes that he can't control his tongue around beautiful flowers, so RIZZ drags the doppelganger to a corner. There, RIZZ orders the doppelganger to stop all the shenanigans because it's unnecessary. The doppelganger takes the order but suddenly begins to speak German, so RIZZ tells him to stop that too. RIZZ finds it more embarrassing than riding the giant hamster. Eventually, they speak out and RIZZ asks Albedo to give Yuri the guild ring she's wearing because she will be attacked by the golems in the next room wearing the ring. When they enter, Albedo realizes that RIZZ made the golems after the likeness of the other supreme beings. In a flashback, he keeps waiting for them to come back, and he wants to believe they're all stuck in this world and he's not alone. In the present, RIZZ tells Albedo that he'll put a statue of himself here one of these days. Haro. However, Albedo starts to cry and begs him not to say that. She begs him to stay in Nazarick and stay with them, but RIZZ dries her tears and explains he can't promise that. Eventually, he tells her he has a plan, and they'll be able to save Shalteri by using one of the 20 world items they have down here. But the power of one world items is expended after one use. He also tells her he doesn't know if he can come back to Nazarick after this because he's going to fight Shalter himself, and he doesn't know if he'll survive. Albedo begs him to change his mind because Nazarick needs him, but RIZZ tells her he has to. He explains that he needs to prove to himself that he's a competent leader, and the second reason is that he'd rather be taken alone if this is a trap. But the third reason is that he may have to exterminate Shalter. RIZZ also knows he's the only one who can take down Shalter among those in Nazarick, but there's a possibility she'll defeat him because she is a magic caster with strength against the undead. However, RIZZ assures her that he's not just supreme leader because of his strength, but because he understands the beings they've created. He assures her that he will win and assures Albedo that he will come back alive after defeating Shalter. Shortly after, Lord Ains takes Aura and Mare with him, but he leaves them behind and tells them to scout the area for enemies. However, he tells them that they're to retreat to Nazarick if they find themselves outnumbered. He also gives them some world-class items. He tells them these items must never be taken from them and they must guard them with their lives. Also, RIZZ considers that it doesn't make sense that he can't detect the owner of the world-class item that overtook Shalter nearby. Meanwhile, in the tomb, Demiurge returns and asks Albedo why he let the master go without support. She explains the master gave the order, but Demiurge asks why she didn't protest, especially because they could have sent in minions in case it's a trap. Demiurge becomes angry that she didn't let them give him support, so she explains that Lord RIZZ was adamant on defeating Shalter with his own two hands. She also explains that he had promised her that he'll return to them and she had to trust her love, but Demiurge believes she acted on emotion and not logic. He reminds her that he's the last of the supreme beings, and Demiurge decides to head out to protect Lord RIZZ. However, Cocytus stops him and Demiurge calls them fools and asks if they're ready to face the possibility of him perishing. Albedo assures him he will return, but Demiurge says he can't know that. Regardless, Albedo tells him to believe in his master, so Demiurge gives up, but he tells her he'd demand that he step down as leader of the Guardians if Lord RIZZ doesn't return. Albedo agrees and asks Cocytus what he thinks the odds are of Lord RIZZ being victorious. Cocytus explains that it's 3 to 7, with 3 in Lord RIZZ's favor. Regardless, Albedo asks them to watch the battle to see how their master will beat the odds. Meanwhile, RIZZ realizes he's made sure to keep things secret to avoid unnecessary fighting along the way while he finds his comrades. He plans to find who did this and destroy them and make sure they regret standing in his way. He continues and considers that he's stupid. There are better ways of handling this. He knows Aura and Mare were convinced, but he knows Albedo must have seen through his lie. He knows this is a huge gamble, and he doesn't know if the resurrection mechanics in this world work like they do in Yggdrasil, but he couldn't let others do this because he couldn't bear to watch any of them try to eliminate one another. When RIZZ approaches Shaltir, he reinforces his body with, like, 200 upgrades. When RIZZ immediately launches his super tier magic, Demiurge wonders if it's not too early. However, super tier magic doesn't use any MP, but he will be unable to cast it again after using it once. RIZZ notices no enemy has shown up and wonders if they're hiding but decides to go in blind. Suddenly, RIZZ retrieves some of the items and strength that his comrades left behind and activates a huge explosion that levels the entire place they're in. When he walks forward, he finds Shalter unscathed while in a red suit, and she begins to laugh. When she sees him, she praises his attempts to try to eliminate her and prepares to eliminate him by herself. Suddenly, Ains notices Shalter still calling him Lord Ains, so he asks her who her master is. When she hears the question, Shalter wonders why she wants to eliminate her beloved monster. It doesn't make sense to her, but she decides to tear him limb from limb. At that moment, Ains realizes he knows what is going on. Immediately, Shalter rushes at him, but she's soon pushed back by an explosive mine that Ains had put in the ground. Ainz explains that he's cast a magic circle of explosive mines in the area surrounding him. Before she lands, he hits her with a whirlpool that affects gravity, but she blocks it with a wall of stone. Ainz breaks the wall and catches her with some thorns. She manages to escape the thorns and flies away, and Ainz tells her that he's looted the ground around him with all kinds of traps. He tells her to fly towards him instead, but she guesses he's almost put traps in the air around him, but Ainz only said that to trick her. The only mine spot he cast was the one she first stepped on, because he can't afford to waste MP on magic that won't bring results. He wonders how much damage he can do before he runs out of MP. Eventually, Shaltair realizes rushing in won't help her, but she knows Ainz's strength is dependent on his MP, so she plans to exhaust it. With the lance with her, she knows she can receive enough HP equal to the damage she deals, so she won't run out of HP. This is the reason Ainz can't summon monsters to fight with him, because it will feed her lance. This is why Ainz has to fight her with just his spells. When she scans him, she realizes he has a staggering amount of MP, which is not normal, but she knows his magic specialization in necromancy won't affect her, and she wonders why he isn't wearing his god-level items. She plans to regenerate and prepare for a long fight, but Ainz summons another attack so as not to make it easy. She teleports to attack him, but he teleports out of the way. He surrounds her with it, which slightly injures her, but she manages to teleport away. When she lands on the ground, he attacks her again, but she teleports. He aims for where she teleports to, but she blocks herself with a shield, which surprises him. Apparently, Ainz didn't know she had such skills, but Ainz tells her it won't save her. Shaltair soon summons a purifying lance that summons a holy object and drives it through Ainz's body, causing him some damage. She attacks him again and is glad that it works well against him. However, Ainz uses a move called Reality Slash and blood spurts out. However, she immediately recovers, and Ainz wonders how she was able to use an abnormal recovery magic. Shaltair makes fun of Ainz and explains that her creator gave her many unusual skills, and that's why he was superior to him as a supreme being, but Ainz assures her that his magic will only be stronger. Shaltair uses her purifying lance again, but she knows she can't use this too many times, and Ainz attacks her too with a slash. After they hit each other, Shaltair scans Ainz and realizes he's running low on MP, but Shaltair knows she has much MP left. She hits with fire, and Ainz hits her with thunder, which causes her damage. When the fire doesn't destroy Ainz, Shaltair realizes he has used a magic barrier to protect against fire because fire destroys the undead. Shaltair decides to stick with the magic that hurts Ainz the most, and she uses holy magic on him, and Ainz attacks her too. The holy magic causes him great pain. Meanwhile, Demiurge learns from Cocytus that holy magic is one of the strongest weaknesses of the undead, so he gives Albedo a bombastic side-eye. Soon after, Shaltair begins to pant because she's used several holy spells. She realizes that Ainz is superior in a battle of magic, but she's glad she's been able to reduce his MP. Suddenly, Ainz uses a spell called Body of Effulgent Barrel, and Shaltair is glad they'll be fighting in close range so she can rip him apart. However, Ainz confesses that she has him cornered, so she wonders why he isn't running. He explains to her that he feels fulfilled actually fighting on the front lines for his guild instead of performing administrative duties. Eventually, they continue, and Ainz creates a whirlwind. Shaltair tears through it and dodges his next attack, allowing her to stab him in the chest. However, Ainz uses his Body of Effulgent Barrel and disappears. He creates a wall of skeletons and releases some fire arrows that follow her. Shaltair manages to recover from the attack and hit Ainz, but he's shocked she recovered. He hits her with triple reality slashes that injures her, but she still manages to knock him backwards. Eventually, Shaltair uses her final trump card, which gladdens Ainz. Her last trump card is a double of herself named Einherjar and a few wolves. Einherjar attacks Ainz, and Shaltair destroys her wolves by herself to heal herself. As Einherjar begins to push back Ainz, he releases a magic called Cry of the Banshee that releases a bright light that covers the entire place. When the light clears, the entire area is covered with sand, but Shaltair is still alive. Apparently, Shaltair has used the resurrection item her creator gave her, and she knows Ainz has low MP. She asks him if he has any last words, but he thanks her for fighting him the way she did because he wouldn't have been able to execute his plan otherwise. He explains that in such fights, deceiving your opponent is most important. For example, he changed his armor so holy attacks aren't very effective, but he'll act as if they cause you damage, or how he acted like the fire attack didn't work on him by keeping his composure. Knowing that she can use life essence to check his HP, he cast a false data magic before they started. He explains that he learned much about her when his friend was creating him, and he's made it a point to memorize every data concerning each NPC since they came to this world. This shocks Shaltair because he said he didn't know her skills, but Ainz explains that he was lying. Annoyed, Shaltair rushes at him, but Ainz summons perfect warrior armor. He's glad everything has played out as expected and they can fight hand to hand. In Nazarick, Cocytus was certain that armor was lost forever. The armor belonged to Lord Touch Me and it could be worn by the warrior class, but Demiurge realizes the spell Lord Ainz cast allows him to change to the warrior class. On the battlefield, Ainz breaks through Shaltair's armor and deals damage. She becomes frantic when she recognizes his sword belongs to another supreme being. She quickly retracts, but Ainz assures her that he has the power of the 41 supreme beings. He tells her she'll learn the reason the supreme beings chose him as their leader. He soon attacks and destroys one of her hands, but she realizes he's wide open. As she attacks with her other hand, Ainz blocks her attack with two daggers belonging to another supreme being. Not long after, he slices slashes her other hand too. She tries to push him away, but Ainz uses the power of another supreme being to summon a huge hand that pushes her backward. She's annoyed, but Ainz soon summons the bow that belongs to her creator. Standing in front of the bow, Shaltair realizes the weapon could only be blocked by magic, but she's expended all her MP. Ainz soon hits her, but she runs towards him to land a last attack. Immediately, the Guardians realizes that Ainz will win because Shaltair has gone fully into offense. While they fight, these guys discuss it like commentators. They know Ainz has too many weapons at his disposal, but Shaltair can't restore HP by attacking Ainz. On the battlefield, Shaltair manages to land a few attacks and makes fun of Lord Ainz's HP drop. He asks her if she's certain, and a timer that Ainz set is triggered. Immediately, Ainz tells her he's won, but Shaltair assures him she still has HP. She frantically attacks him, but Ainz blocks her attacks and launches a super tier magic and begins to cast a spell. Ainz uses an item to speed up the attack, and as she's about to stop him, Ainz distracts her and finishes his spell. As the light overwhelms her, Shaltair fades away and admits that Ainz is the greatest. When they get back to Nazarick, Ainz prepares to resurrect Nazarick. The Guardians also stand nearby to finish Shaltair off if she's still under mind control when she's resurrected, but Ainz struggles with that. Ainz knows it will cost 500 million gold to revive Shaltair, but he does it regardless. Soon after, Shaltair appears without the influence of the mind control. When Shaltair wakes up, Ainz is glad and apologizes that all this happened because of his mistake. However, she hugs him while being partially nude and is glad that this will be their first time. Albedo soon interjects and Ainz asks Shaltair to rest. The only thing that Shaltair remembers is hunting the humans, but she begins to lament that the pads on her chest are gone. Annoyed, the others chastise her, and Ainz feels nostalgia as he watches all his children talk. The others suggest to Ainz that Shaltair be scolded harshly, but Ainz laughs. He tells him the mistake was his because he didn't act well based on the information they received, so he tells Shaltair she isn't guilty of everything. Eventually, when Demiurge asks about Sebas, Ainz explains that Sebas is stationed as bait. Apparently, he put Sebas in E-Rantel as bait to lure whoever attacked Shaltair and sent others to watch Sebas to be able to protect him and catch whoever did this. Ainz realizes there may be several people who have the power to harm Nazarick, so he considers using his necromancy skills to raise the undead to protect the tomb. Since human corpses can only make weak undead, Albedo tells Ainz about a nearby village of lizard men. Meanwhile, the captain of the Black Scripture reports to his superiors about how they were injured by the vampire before the mind control could fully take effect. They have sent some of their force to seek out who stole the crown of wisdom, so they decide to watch things and be wary of whoever could defeat that vampire. While that's happening, Nabe also escorts Lizzie and Anna Firea to Carney village. Also, at the capital, Gazef finds Brain in a disoriented state. Shortly after, Momin returns to the guild after being promoted to being one of the only 3 adamantite adventurers in Reyes. Adamantite is the highest level available, and Momin soon goes to the counter to request for a new quest. The lady explains there's nothing that fits his strength available, so he asks her to keep him posted. As he steps out, he receives some information, so he orders that they mobilize Gargantua, the guard of the 4th floor.